done your part. You are no longer held accountable before God for that issue as long as your heart has been sincere and your efforts were acceptable. Right? Again, it's the whole thing of, when your kids are fighting with each other and you say, tell your brother you're sorry. No, I'm sorry. That's not where Jesus is not talking about that. That condition of your heart there is not sincere. You didn't make an effort to make amends. That's why amends in recovery ministries, that's why it's such a big part as you walk through the steps. There's always, whatever the recovery ministry you go through, there is a section where it's going to talk about your need to make amends, to fix and make things right with those that you have hurt and harmed in the past. And that's what Jesus is saying. You have a responsibility to make things right when they have been wrong. Years ago, I've told the story as I was asked to do a funeral for someone, and as I sat with a family, and they were telling me about the grandmother who had passed away and how much she loved Jesus and her Bible was full of stuff. They said, but she hadn't been in church in 50 years. And I said, why? And here I've got 3 more generations of people sitting around a table and none of them go to church. And I said, why? And they said, because she was hurt by the church. And I said, what happened? They said she was in a horrible relationship with a husband who was beating her and the kids, and she just couldn't stay anymore, and she left, and the church told her she was wrong, and they would not support her anymore, that she couldn't come to church. And I stopped, and I just sat with them, and I began to cry. My heart was breaking, and I said, I need to do something. And I looked at this family who I'm just meeting, and I said, I need to apologize. I need to make this right. The church failed you and your family. And I am here asking for forgiveness for the church. And it was a God moment. It wasn't me. It was just the God working in me. And God began a restoration process in that family's life. And it's still going to this day. Something happens when we make things right. It's our responsibility. And the other thing that Jesus hits on here is with people outside the church as well. Because he talks about when you've wronged a brother and sister, and then he says, now, if you have an adversary. So he's talking about somebody outside the church. There are things. It says, if you have an issue with an adversary, what he says is, we need to be people of peace. We have to do what we can. He says you need to make every effort to bring peace to this situation before it gets to this really bad part. Back in verse 9 in the Beatitudes, Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. And what will they be called? Children of God. That's his belief. It says those who seek to be peacemakers, they will be called children of God. In Romans chapter 12, we read these words that say we are called to live in harmony with one another. It says, do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And he said, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. These challenges we see in Scripture supporting the words of Christ himself. The challenge is to make every effort to live at peace with people. And it's a very significant statement that Jesus is making here. See, in those days, if people were found guilty of whatever in court, they were thrown into jail until the debt was paid. Now, so what does that mean? Well, it means your family was the one who had to pay the price. that you had to stay there until your family worked off the debt, whatever it would have been. And if they didn't do it, you're never going to get out. And that's kind of what Jesus is saying. Don't let your family, that's the church. Don't make us pay the bill for something you've done. Try to make these things right. Make every effort so that it never gets this far in this space. Because so what Jesus is doing is he's affirming what he said last week, what I said last week, which were that there are consequences for our actions. And he's saying it again. Right? Jesus is saying that our actions could actually reflect bad on our family. And as believers, our actions reflect bad on the church. So we got to understand, that's what he's saying. It's not just about me and trying to say, well, how right I want to be. It's Jesus saying, you need to make sure that you are doing everything you can to make the church look right, to make the church look good, to make the church look like people who care and love one another. Right? We can all be bad about justifying our actions. We can come up with all the best scenarios of why we are right in our own minds. But Jesus is cautioning us about that here. He's talking about how we treat one another. And he's equating, remember, our treatment of one another to murder. We need to ponder these things deeply this morning. He's saying how you treat other people is deeply impacting. We have to remember that we are only responsible for what others hold against us when it relates to our sinful behavior. Right? And if we aren't for sure if it's sinful or not, then we need to just own it as best we can and do everything we can to make it right. See, the other part I'll remind you again this morning is just this idea of taking responsibility and trying to make things right is that the effort of reconciliation is on us. The actual act of it taking place, the actual act of reconciliation, we cannot control. But we can control the attitude of the heart in which it makes the effort to reconcile with people who are hurt or people that even have hurt us. That's on the heart of the receiver. Now, a number of years ago, early in ministry, Heidi and I went through a situation at a church that we were on staff at, and we were wronged. We were treated really bad, and we were hurt. We were hurt by some people in the church. We were hurt by the pastor of the church. Part of what led us to eventually God calling us to this church. But we stayed in this space and we kept doing everything we could to make amends for things we didn't even feel like we did wrong. And there were times that over the years, for 7 years, I would see this pastor places. And God would say, you need to go over and shake his hand. You need to go over and say hello. You need to go give him a hug. And I would just be like, it ain't happening. And I would have these conversations with God and say, God, I'm done. Like, I put that to rest years ago. I don't have any issues with him. And God said, he has an issue with you. You need to go over and see, and you need to go shake his hand. You need to go say hello. And some days I would go just kicking the ground. Like, okay, God. And there were times I'd walk up and I'd even say, hey, Pastor. Could be with my wife, with someone else, and he would literally say, hi, Heidi, and walk on. Regular. 7 years of it, of God saying, you need to do this. And I'd be like, God, I don't need to do this. You don't get it. I'm done. I'm good. I don't need to do this. God said, but he has an issue. And I'm like, the issue is his problem. These were my conversations. And it took 7 years to get a phone call one day from that pastor saying, could you and your wife, could you guys meet with me? We were like, okay. We met, had a little idle talk, and then he said, well, let's get to the point of why I've asked you to come. He said, I've asked you here so I could apologize. I have been ashamed of myself for 7 years, embarrassed to look at you. You have loved me. You have treated me right. That every time you would come and shake my hand, give me a hug, ask how I was, I hung my head in shame. His pride wouldn't allow him to make amends for how he had hurt us. And so all that time, it wasn't about me. It was, but God was saying, I need you to go make this right with him because he has an issue. And I'm like, but God, that's his problem. And it was his problem. But God needed me to keep being this light to get him to the place that he could finally give in and pursue God and make amends with God and make amends with us. 7 years. It's not about us looking good or anything else. It's just I have to share that story because it makes sense with what Jesus is saying. If someone has an issue, do everything you can to be people of peace, to be reconcilers, to be peacemakers. And you will be called children of God. I believe with all our heart, Heidi and I have said this forever, we believe that all of our heart that God has blessed us and blessed our ministry for years and years and years because of those moments. That God has spoke to us at times and said, I will bless you because you were faithful when you didn't want to be. And there's been moments like this in our lives. So I don't say that to say, look how great we are because I mess up all the time. But what I say it is because Jesus' words are true. If we do what he has called us to do, he will be glorified and you will be called a child of God. You will receive the bountiful blessing. It's absolute hypocrisy for us to live as though we are in a right relationship with God, knowing that there's a situation in your life that you have made no effort to correct before the Lord. You can't do that. You can't show up at church, oh, I love you, Jesus, I love you, Lord, all that, knowing in your heart that you got some major issues with somebody that you are refusing to correct. Jesus says you can't do that. You can't live that way. You cannot function that way and be in a true, deep relationship with me. You have to make amends. You have to make peace. You need to do that. So some questions for us to ponder this morning as we're wrapping up. So I would ask you these questions. Number one, easy. Are you living with anger right now towards anyone in your life? And for some of you, I'm going to say this. It might be really legitimate anger from a world's perspective. I've had to deal with some anger with some people in my life that I've had to give to the Lord. And sometimes it was a journey. I'm going to be really honest. It's not always easy just to say, no, we're good. When we found out someone had stolen my Heidi's brother's entire life savings, that a friend had betrayed us and stolen everything, had been lying to us and taking advantage of us, we were angry. And it took a while. It wasn't just simple, oh, okay, I'll forgive them and it go on. It's a choice. Keep choosing to pursue that reconciliation of the heart between you and the Lord and hopefully with the other person. But when you can't and you don't have that opportunity or it's not going to work, you've got to make sure you're reconciled before God and you've given those issues to him. So are you living with anger right now towards anyone? It's a real deep question. Deeper question. Are you responsible for any anger someone has against you? Think about that. That's a hard question. That's a tough question to look in the mirror and go, is there anybody that's angry at me because of something I've done to them that I'm responsible for and I haven't fixed? I had to sit in my office and think about this one for a little bit. Okay, where am I? Are there anyone in my life right now? I had to really talk to the Lord and say, God, you show me if there's anyone in my life right now that I have not done this with, because I've had to. There are definitely some times in my life where I've had to make some amends. Are you responsible for any bitterness that someone has against you? Maybe they're not super angry, but they're just still really frustrated with you because you haven't made an effort to do anything? Is there anyone in your life right now that you can think of that you have not made the effort to be at peace with? And that's a whole topic in itself and a whole teaching around being at peace with people, but have you made the effort? Is there anyone in your life you can think of right now that you know, I have definitely made no effort? I've just said, I would say if you answer yes to any of those questions, you probably have some work to do. You probably need to talk to the Lord a little bit. Probably need to reconcile some stuff in your heart. And maybe you need to make some steps to reconcile some stuff with some people. And again, it's not about how they receive it or what you can go, I've tried. If you've tried, then you've tried. Sincerely. What they do with it is up to them. This is about you and God. This is about you being able to say, God, do I stand clear and clean before you? Did I do what you asked me to do in the situation? If they don't want to be reconciled, they don't want to forgive, they don't on your shoulders if you have done what God has asked you to do. That's what Jesus is saying here. He's saying, don't be comfortable just saying, oh, I didn't kill anybody. Dig deeper in your heart and ask yourself, how have I really treated people? And do I need to make amends for any of that? These are deep conversations. I'm going to ask our worship team to come on up. Because we're going to close up this morning. I want to challenge you this morning to ponder those things. Maybe there's some things you need to pray about. Maybe there's some people who have come to your mind. Maybe there's some situations this morning that you're thinking about. Maybe some of you are thinking, I do have that one thing, and have I reconciled that between the Lord? Have I done the things that God has asked me to do? Just double check. Nothing wrong with that. Just talk to the Lord. Jesus, am I good? Are we good? Have I done what you've asked me to do? And if not, then I want to challenge you to pray about that and say, God, how can I do this? And will you help me to do this? Will you help me to be a peacemaker, a reconciler? Will you help me to make things right? Remember that God has called us. He's called all of us who have experienced the peace of God in our own life that He has given to us. He has called us all to be peacemakers with others. In and out of the church, you see that passage. He addressed those in the church and those outside the church. He just said, make every effort on your part to be peacemakers and reconcilers so that you can live and be blessed and be called a child of God. Take it and dig in your heart and see what is there. We're going to stand. We're going to close this morning and celebrate a little bit. But I want you to pray about those things. I want to challenge you to think about that. Maybe you need to sit, make some lists. God, is there anyone that I'm not in a good space with that I need to just make the effort? Maybe you need to write a letter to somebody and send it to say, hey, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I don't know. But Jesus, I feel like everything he says obviously is important, but these things that he's hitting right up front, when he's got everybody's attention before they start nodding off and walking away, he's like, got them. He's hitting on that stuff right off the top. Man, there's got to be a reason. He knows who we are. He knows our sinful desires, our sinful natures. He knows how we have been hurt and hurt others. And so he just wants to help us get clean, get clear, so that we can be all that he has called us to be. Let's trust him as we celebrate all that he is, all that Jesus is. Let's celebrate this morning. Father, bless us as we close in celebration this morning, Lord. But God, as we search our hearts, as we allow you, as we invite your Holy Spirit to come in and show us, your word says, search me, O God, and know my heart, and show me. See if there is anything in me that does not support who you are. And if so, point it out so that I can go make amends, so that I'm not held captive to this space that you talked about, Jesus, when you said, those who act this way, they're worthy of that place called hell. So Lord, you take these things within our heart seriously. Help our righteousness to exceed that of the Pharisees. May our righteousness on the inside be what people recognize more than what's on the outside. Be glorified as we honor you, as we give to you, and as we allow you to search our hearts. Praise you this morning, Lord. feel like that song, I was buried beneath my shame. The stuff that Jesus is talking about, when we are living those ways, we find this healing, this restoration, this life when he calls us by name. To give up that stuff, to not carry that stuff, and live in this glorious day that he has called us to. It's a beautiful thing. Hope that this word is resonating with you, that Jesus has spoken into our lives. And it was so good then, and it's so good today. Hope that you're receiving it the way Jesus intended for us, I think, to receive it and apply it to our lives. Hope that this week ahead is blessed for you as you celebrate wherever you are, if you're with friends and family. If you're going out of town, we hope you'll be safe. Hope that it's a very great and wonderful 4th of July time of celebrating for you guys. Remind people to celebrate, to support our firework booth if you can. If you brought God's tithes and offerings, you can share those on the way out, assuming your heart is clear. And, let's be honest, that's what the Lord said, so let's honor him in that. Let's give out of the right perspective, the right heart, even this morning. And so may he be glorified in all of that. May your week be blessed. If by chance you're visiting with us today, and you want to fill out a visitor card, they're in the back of the chairs, or you can click on a QR code out in the front and do it digitally if you'd rather do it that way, but we'd love to send you a little info about the church. Hope that your day is incredibly blessed. So go in the Lord, have a great week, and happy 4th of July.